Imagine you're in a Balkan wedding. The room is loud, people are eating, drinking, socializing, critiquing table decorations. The music is slow until the band leans into a new melody with an accordion. Someone gets up, reaches your hand, and within 10 seconds you're in a kolo snaking throughout the entire room. Nobody planned it, it just happened. That feeling that pulls your body out of a chair faster than your brain can think, that's Muzika. Dobrodošli na Folklor Academy, and today we're going to dive into the background and origin of Bosnian folk music. Whether you grew up hearing Sevdalinka in the kitchen, or this is the first time hearing about the harmonika, this video is going to be an introductory lesson into the rhythms and melodies of narodna muzika. Bosnian folk music has many layers of influence, as generations of people impacted both the sounds and instruments. The oldest layer is South Slavic oral tradition, and these were mainly passed down from generation to generation by word of mouth. These would include love songs, stories about harvests, folk legends, a lot of stuff that related to village life. And this type of music wasn't just entertainment, it was form and function. It was communication about life. Ottoman rule lasted from the mid-1400s to late 1800s, and this was very transformative to the musical scene in regional culture. You hear it in the way melodies bend and slide rather than move in straight lines. Sevdalinka, which were these traditional Bosnian folk songs, emerged during this time, and this is where you see a lot of the blending of the South Slavic oral tradition with this new Turkish aesthetic. Over time, religion and commerce overlapped in these areas, especially in places like Sarajevo, where you had Islam, Orthodox Christianity, Catholicism, Judaism, all sharing the same streets and marketplaces. This type of closeness exploded the musical scene with so many different new styles. And you can't talk about Balkan folk music without mentioning Tepsijanje, who were these Romani musicians that traveled across the entire Balkan region. For generations, they brought this new intensity to so many different regional varieties, where their influence is deeply impactful, even if it goes unmentioned in history sometimes. Slavic roots, Turkish instruments, Romani spice, they all blended together like this musical chorba. And the flavors of sound that was produced during this time period in this specific region sounds like nowhere else on the planet. Now let's talk instruments. This video will keep it practical and focus on the instruments that you're more likely to hear in Bosnian, Serbian, or other Balkan folk ensembles. The frula is a simple wooden flute about 30 centimeters long with 6 finger holes, 3 per hand. It's the sound of something called chobanska svirka, which is kind of like shepherds playing in free, improvised open air. If you heard it, you probably won't forget it. The dvojnice are 2 pipes carved from a single piece of wood played simultaneously. One pipe has 3 holes, the other has 4, creating a natural 2-voice harmony. Soft, full, deeply pastoral, this music was made to express emotion and communicate across hillsides. The šargija is a long-necked lute brought from the Middle East during Ottoman rule. It's about 80 centimeters long, 5 strings plucked with a Tradicionalne pick, traditionally made from cherry bark or other types of wood. The middle open string, called the tanderkusha, gives the šargija its completely distinctive sound. The saz is the king of long-necked lutes. It's around 135 centimeters long, taking almost a year to build. 6 to 16 strings with movable frets made from wire or silk tied into knots. The saz has generally been the instrument most closely associated with Sevdalinka, usually beginning a song in unison with the singer's voice. Every instrument that we just talked about was played by men, and that's not really by accident. In traditional Bosnian folk culture, women did not play instruments, but they were extremely important in carrying on vocal tradition. Women sang and they passed down songs, and they did it using the oldest instrument known to man, or known to woman. They used the oldest instrument ever, which was their voice. Women had Tepsijanje, where a copper pan, usually one for cooking, was placed upright on a table or a sofra. One woman would rotate it, and another leans over and sings directly into that spinning metal surface. The copper would reflect the voice back in this raw, resonant echo, unlike anything else. It's very old, but it's still very much alive in certain parts of Bosnia and Bosnian folk groups today. Tepsijanje is a reminder that sometimes people didn't wait for instruments, they used what they had to make something absolutely beautiful. Now, let's talk about the instrument that changed everything. The harmonika innovated the Balkan music game. It was a relative newcomer compared to the saz or the frula, and this manufactured, factory-produced instrument came in 2 forms. the klavirska harmonika, featuring a piano keyboard, and something called the dugmetara or the puchara, which had a set of buttons acting as keys. It wasn't until the 20th century that the harmonika truly took over. The saz, which has been the traditional pairing of Sevdalinka for centuries, slowly stepped aside. Accordion and violin-led ensembles became the standard pairing for Sevdalinka moving forward. Well, why did this happen? The harmonika is portable and practical to bring to bars, birthday parties, weddings, other events. It's loud enough to fill a room, and it can blend melody and harmony simultaneously. For a master harmoničar, which is someone who plays the harmonika, this is a one orchestra instrument. Radio music, state folk festivals, labels like Diskoton, they all professionalized and popularized Bosnian folk music, mainly through the second half of the 20th century. The accordion was at the center of it all. You had legends like Safet Izović, Himzo Polovina, Ismet Alajbegović Šerbo. They all built their recordings around harmonica-led arrangements, and that became the template for generations. Every stage performance from Sarajevo to Banja Luka had a harmoničar in its presence. After the war in the 1990s, Bosnians and ex-Yugoslavians scattered across Scandinavia, Central Europe, and even here in the United States. At every Bosnian event from Sweden to St. Louis, the inclusion of the accordion is something that revitalizes their Balkan spirit. If Bosnian music has a soul, Sevdalinka is that soul. Sevdalinka is a traditional Bosnian folk music originating in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And in 2024, it was added to the UNESCO Intangible List. UNESCO Representative Tangible. It was added to the UNESCO Representative List of Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity, which is basically the world saying that this is extremely awesome stuff that should have been categorized in the first place. Sevdalinka is derived from the Turkish word sevda, which is a word for love, but also a word for longing. It's best described as love sickness, and it makes sense because a lot of these Sevdalinka lyrics relate to love, but in a way that's both joyful and sad simultaneously. Some of these songs are usually in a slow or moderate tempo, but carry this kind of deep emotional structure and melody. However, each singer really has their own style. Different vocalists usually lead the song, and the music and instruments will follow. Now, the golden era of Sevdalinka came through the Yugoslav recording industry and had artists like Zaim Imamović, Himzo Polovina, Safet Izović, Meho Puzić. All these people defined Sevdalinka for the next generations to come. Modern Sevdalinka arrangements usually feature more non-traditional instruments, violins, flutes, guitars, bass, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sevdalinka is not supposed to be this frozen piece of culture that's stuck in a time period. A lot of modern artists, they take this traditional and influential part of their history and breathe life into it in a way that's new and beautiful regardless. In the former Yugoslavia, there was a deliberate effort to preserve, standardize, and promote this traditional folk culture that existed for generations. Folklore was a part of school life, a part of community life, a part of being Yugoslavian, and to some, a part of being Bosnian. The ensembles that would perform in KUDovi were called narodni orkestar, a folk orchestra that included violin, accordion, bass, a handful of instruments that turn traditional folk music into something that makes more sense for a stage performance. You could also find a tamburaški orchestra, which used a variety of string instruments. These were less common, but still pretty prevalent throughout the region. After the war and breakup of Yugoslavia, some KUDovi still survived and managed to bring traditional culture to modern audiences. In present-day Sarajevo, you have groups like KUD Lola, KUD Ekrem Mujkić that accept youth and adult members to continue on this tradition. These groups perform at international folk festivals, they host events and seminars. They do so much international recognition for Balkan culture, and it's all to promote the celebration of song and dance. And in the diaspora, the same story played out. KUDovi formed all over, from Detroit to Chicago to Vienna, with the goal in mind of keeping children connected to their history, their ancestry, using narodna muzika. Some of these groups, like KUD Veza Chicago, are still very active and host events frequently. Being in a KUD is essentially the answer to the question that every diaspora community is going to ask itself. How do we keep our kids connected to where they come from? And there you have it. Slavic roots, Ottoman impact, Sevdalinka, Tepsijanje. These are all the ingredients of the Bosnian folk music flavor palette. I hope this video helped you learn a little bit more about Bosnian folk music and its history. As always, feel free to leave a comment about what you learned, or maybe what you want to learn about folklore in the future. Thank you for taking some time to learn about Bosnian folk music history and its origins. Vidimo se sljedeći put I prijatno.